lobe, what does that do? Complex task management, problem solving, it's thinking. Are you filming me? Someone was filming me the other day. I'm feeling fat. I'm really anterior of the frontal lobe, we would think, something that deals with problem solving, thinking. What makes you you? You're solving problems with this part of your brain. You're moving with this part of your brain, okay? So the posterior aspect of the frontal lobe is the motor region, okay? So motor region here. Anterior part of the parietal lobe, okay? Anterior part is the somatosensory cortex. So somatosensory, break the word down. So it's sensory information, okay? So that's touch, okay, vibration, anything coming from up here because it's somatic. So this is my movable tissue, okay? So somatosensory information travels up, goes through the thalamus because the thalamus is your sensory gateway, and it lands in here. And that's helping you manage whatever movements, okay, or positions you're maintaining, okay? That travels up and along the posterior columns that we'll talk about over here on the transverse section of the cord, okay? So that information, somatosensory information, travels up the large posterior columns of the cord. I move further, all the way to the back. If I want to know about the visual cortex, I would point right here. If I want to ask about occipital lobe, I'll point right here. I'm not going to get into any vague territory and say, oh, is it right there? What about there? So this would be the occipital lobe, and primary thing that happens there, visual cortex. This is your temporal lobe, and this is auditory. Okay, so this is your auditory association area. If I was to peel this back and put, I don't think we do that on the. We wouldn't want to damage the brain that much. But if I was to peel this back, the insula lies in there, deep in this lateral sulcus, and that is the sensitive. Okay, so those are your lobes. Okay, so pretty big stuff. It's pretty much, the frontal lobe is so big, it's got two things that it does, but then parietal lobe, we're talking about one thing, occipital lobe, one thing, temporal lobe, one thing, insula, one thing, okay? So we don't have a heck of a lot of stuff there. This, okay, so the component here that we might call the diencephalon, okay? So this is, I'd probably take it apart so that it's something like this, but have this nearby so that you can at least do a relative comparison. This big old thing back here hanging off the back, if you recall, okay, that's the cerebellum. Cerebellum coordinates voluntary movements, okay? That's what we've taken it down to. Other things, this would be your brain stem, okay, traveling anterior to this. Midbrain, okay, we have the medulla oblongata and the pons. The pons is huge on humans because we have feet and hands. Okay, so sheep, you didn't see it very well in the sheep's brain because they have hooves and they kind of go like this. Okay, so there's not much coordinating necessary. There's a lot of coordination. Our cerebellum is huge, and we have this pons as a relay center between the motor region of our frontal lobe and the cerebellum. So this pons is an important relay center, okay, for coordination and production of voluntary motions. Other things that are here, so now we have just basic structures. So this guy right here, corpus callosum, okay? Large commissure would be the word that we would use. Goes from left to right and right to left, okay? Heavy white matter. This side needs to know what's happening over here and vice versa. Other types of white matter were projection fibers and association fibers, difficult to show, okay? So probably wouldn't ask questions about that, save that for the lecture test. Hypothalamus lies in here, okay? So hypothalamus lies there. You're lucky I'm in a good mood. Then I would also have the pituitary gland available for tagging, okay, right there. And also you've seen the pineal gland, okay? So the pineal gland sits superior to the superior colliculi, okay? It's a singular entity right in the center, okay? And when you peel the cerebellum down away from the occipital lobe, so if we did this, there we go. So if we had done this and taken it apart, you'd basically be looking at that structure. That structure right there, okay? So pineal gland, so that's your crossover, or an area that is your crossover of neurological with endocrine system, okay? Hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal gland, all really easy to tag, very available, okay? So if you're wondering how I was going to go about getting endocrine system into the questions, that's how it would happen, okay? So those are your big structures there. This is the optic chiasm. I'll probably hold off and ask about something about the nerve when I have the eye available. Okay? So that's the brain. Then we'll stick with the central nervous system. Okay? Central system involves the brain, spinal cord. So spinal cord, we went through the 5 tracts, and I use the word tract intentionally because a cluster or grouping of axons that are within the central nervous system are called tracts. A group of axons in the peripheral nervous system are called nerves. Okay? So the tracts that were called motor tracts, okay, we had tectospinal, eyes and head. I want to coordinate that movement. Reticulospinal, axillary motions. Vestibulospinal, basically extensors. Okay? Rubrospinal, proximal flexors, and then corticospinal, okay, fingers basically. Okay? That's the largest component. Huge motor tract there. I wouldn't sit here because I didn't go through. This is the lateral, corticospinal tract. We're not specifying those. Okay, so they lie anterior and lateral in the white matter, though. Okay, decent general knowledge to have. Okay, posteriorly though we can be really specific because we have these posterior horns of the gray matter that are acting as borders for these 2 large columns here. We would call them the posterior columns or the dorsal columns. And they ascend up into the brain or in the central nervous system at the thalamus. Okay, so we have fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus traveling up these columns. Okay, fasciculus cuneatus, basically upper arm and torso. Fasciculus gracilis, lower extremity, okay, and torso. So this is sensory information from that somatic tissue. So we could say it's somatosensory information, ascending or afferent information traveling in these columns. Okay, so they're huge. Okay, you can't get away from how much sensory information travels up from this stuff. Okay, so and a lot of it is unconscious. It's not just me going, oh, I can feel that, I can feel that. It's the fact that I'm standing very casually and I have a lot of weight on this leg and it's equaling out the pressure. I'm doing it without even thinking about it, postural types of things. So these are huge columns here. Since this is the back and this is the front, these little white things or little yellow things here on either side, okay, these things here, they're rootlets. But I really want you to kind of focus on, it was number 18 and 17 here. This is considered the dorsal root and the ventral root. Dorsal being posterior, ventral being anterior. Okay, so dorsal and ventral roots. What's carried on those on that conduit? The information that's carried here is all sensory. Okay, sensory information on the dorsal root going in and up these columns. Motor information from those tracts that I mentioned earlier, traveling down and out of the central nervous system. This is efferent information traveling on the ventral root. So dorsal and ventral roots, okay, what the information is traveling on them, good to know. Dorsal root ganglion, okay, sensory. And out here, if I got all the way out here, this is a spinal nerve. Why is it a spinal nerve? Because it's coming off of the spinal cord. Okay, we have 2 components to the nervous system that is the peripheral nervous system. We have spinal nerve and we have cranial nerves. Okay, so spinal nerves, these are mixed nerves. They carry sensory information up and in, and they carry motor information down and out. Okay, so both afferent and efferent information travels on this. Okay, so cross section of that guy. We had the eye and the ear as well. Okay, so we'll do the eye first. Well, actually, let me do this first because I just bumped into this guy. I forgot all about it. Okay. So this nerve man standing here. Okay. So we had some different things that were called plexuses.